Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and to another video. So today we are going to look at an installer which I think personally it's a little bit overlooked and sometimes criticized for its not so ease of use. And that is the Anaconda Installer that we find in Fedora and also on all RHEL-based distributions. So what I want to do in this video, I want to walk through some of the options that might be hidden or that you might not know about. So let's go ahead here and start the installer. Now, the first page is of course very simple. We just need to select the language. This is gonna come up in a second. There you go. So let's select English here and continue. And because this is still in beta, Fedora 34 is actually coming out today, but I still have the beta ISO here. It doesn't really matter because we are just going to make a base install. I'm gonna change here my keyboard layout to select the keyboard I have and click add, and I'm gonna remove the English keyboard because I don't have that. So far so good. The time zone is already selected because I have already an internet connection here. If you don't, you can always click on your Wi-Fi if you have Wi-Fi, of course, and you can select your network there. And then we can go to installation destination. Now this is where things maybe look a little bit out of the ordinary, so to say, compared to an installer like say Calamares or the Ubiquiti installer. So you can see we have only one disk in this machine. This is 50 gigabytes and it's empty. And it's selected as an installation disk. Now, if you have multiple disks, for example, you could choose actually multiple disks here and then later create an LVM. If you choose to do that, you can do it here in the installer as well. Now, you have also the option here to select specialized and network disks. So if we click here, we have a choice here to add iSCSI targets, to add also many other kind of devices, if you happen to have those devices, of course. And we can have also here the selection for multipath devices, if you have those, or SAN devices or NVDIMM devices as well. Now, of course, I don't have that. So we can go back to the next options here. And the storage configuration, by default, usually when you install Fedora, it's going to be automatic. But as you can see here, we have the custom option, and we have also an advanced option, the Blive GUI, so-called Blive GUI, which is a little bit more graphical tool to basically partition your disk. Now, the custom option is actually, in my opinion, a little bit easier, and it offers a little bit more options. We're going to look at this in a second. We can also choose here, for example, also to encrypt the data if you choose to do so. Once you click here and you select the automatic installation, you will be asked to enter the password for your system, and then your system will be encrypted. We have also here a link that I will click here. And as you can see, we have here the selected disk and bootloader. Of course, we have only one disk here, but if we click the disk, if for any reason you don't want to install the bootloader, for example, you're selecting two disks here, you can select which disk you don't want to have the bootloader on. That's the way to do it here. Now we can click close. And so let's go ahead and custom actually our partitioning by going to the custom section and then click done. You can see the other options here already disappeared. So here we have basically an empty disk. We have here on the bottom the available space and the total space. So right now this disk is empty. We don't have anything in there. So here we have two choices. We can make an automatical installation. We can make an automatical partitioning, better said, and we can choose the layout that we want to select for that. So right now we have BudFS selected because, as you know, Fedora 33 and Fedora 34 are using now the BudFS file system. But you have the choice here of creating also standard partitions, or also LVMs if you choose to do so, or also LVM theme provisioning. Now, standard partition, of course, will just create standard partitions like, EFI partitions, and then you can create basically your root partition, your home partition. You can format them with the ext4 file system, you can encrypt them. XFS is also an option, and so on. And with the LVM option, you can create your LVM directly in here. Now, what I'm going to show you in this video is how you actually can create your BudFS installation and also encrypt it, because there are some options for encryption that are not so obvious and you need to dig a little bit to find them out. So these are the options that you can select if you want to create the partitioning automatically. So once you select one of these options here and you click here to create automatically, it's going to create the partitions automatically for you. These are the same partitions that are going to be created if you would have chosen the automatic installation in the previous screen. Now, this is not so interesting for me. I want to do this manually because I want to show you how you can do it. Also, if you want to add more subvolumes eventually. So I'm going to refresh the disk here and click rescan disk and then click OK. And then I need to select again the disk here, custom, and then click done, and we go back to the previous screen. So I'm going to click the plus button here. And the first partition I want to create is the EFI partition because this is a UEFI machine. So the mount point is going to be /boot/EFI. This is mandatory in this installer, otherwise Fedora will not boot. And then the capacity is going to be, in my case, 300 megabytes. And then I can click add mount point. Now in Fedora, you need to create also a separate boot partition. So this is still something that was actually so when we didn't have yet any UEFI systems. Everything was in the separate boot partition. And the reason for that is very clearly explained here in this article from the Fedora magazine, which I can pull over here. There you go. And as you can see here, it says one of the reasons for putting the boot directory on a separate partition was to ensure that the bootloader and kernel were located within the first 1024 cylinders of the disk. We are talking about the pre-UEFI era here. Now, most modern computers do not have the 1024 cylinder restriction anymore, so for most people this concern is no longer relevant. However, modern UEFI-based computers have a different restriction that makes it necessary to have a separate partition for the bootloader. So we need to put the bootloader in the boot EFI partition because it's now required by UEFI system, but in Fedora, the boot partition has to be there because some configuration files for the bootloader and also the initram fs are still separated. So let's close this window here and create our separate boot partition by clicking the plus here and going to /boot. And the size is going to be 600 megabytes in my case, and then click add mount. So this is going to be a standard partition, as you can see here, and the file system is ext4. So here you don't actually have to change anything. Now let's create our Btrfs system. So let's click on the plus button here, and for the mount point I'm going to go here with the /, which represents the root file system. And the size for the root subvolume is going to be, I would say, 19 gigabytes, and then click add mount point. Now here there are some things that we need to change. You can see the Btrfs file system is selected automatically. We can change this, of course, to LVM or standard partition if you want to do that. But what I want to do here, I want to actually encrypt it, but you can see the encrypt button here is actually grayed out. I cannot do anything here. So what I need to do, I need to go here on the modify button. And I want to change also the name here. Instead of Fedora localhost live, I'm just going to go with Fedora. And here I do have the encrypt button available. So I can click this. And now I can select which encryption I want to use, LUX1 or LUX2. I'm going to go with LUX2 here. And we can also change the RAID level, but this is useful if you have multiple devices on the same file system. So we are not in this case here. So I'm just going to leave single. You can also set your size policy. Right now is automatic, but you can go as large as possible or fixed, and then you would have to add the size here. So I'm going to go for automatic here and then click save. And now we have our encrypted root subvolume here. So I'm going to add also the home subvolume by clicking again the plus button here and select as a mount point here the home directory. And let's say that for the size we want to create a 15 gigabytes subvolume, and then click add mount point. And there you go. And let's say for the sake of this tutorial, we want to create also a separate var subvolume. So we can click the plus here. And as you can see, we have also var. So I'm going to click this and I'm going to use the rest of the disk. And I'm going to click add mount point. Now this is just an example, of course, it's just to show you how the process is done. But as you can see, every subvolume here is encrypted because we are still in the same file system. So the var subvolume is encrypted, the root subvolume is encrypted, and also the home subvolume is encrypted as well. Now in this case, I didn't create any swap, but you can do that if you want to, of course. You just make a smaller partition and create one as well. But by default, Fedora is going to create anyway a ZRAM that we will see later when we boot the machine. So in my case, this is done here, so I can click done. And as you can see, now we are asked to select our passphrase. So let's select our passphrase here and repeat it. And then click save passphrase. It's going to take a moment here to do that. And this is the summary of the changes that are going to happen on the disk. So until this point, the disk was not actually touched. So we can click now on accept changes. And it's going to take a moment here to create the partitions. And there you go. You can see now custom partitioning is now selected. We don't have any error and we can begin our installation. So I'm going to pause the video here. Now I'm going to wait until the installation is finished and I'll be back with you guys in a moment. So here we go. The installation is now finished, so we can reboot our machine. So let me go here and click restart and click restart again. It's going to take a moment here to boot up. So as you can see, we are now asked for the encryption password, so let's enter that. And now we should be able to boot in our system. Now we are going to look in the terminal here at the configuration one more time. So let's wait here to boot up, and we'll need to go through the setup here very quickly. So let's click start setup. I'm going to accept the defaults here, create very quickly a user and a password. And I'm going to skip the tour because I don't need to do this right now. There you go, no thanks. So we can go to the terminal here, and let me go full screen and increase the font size. And let's type in lsblk. You can see Fedora creates by default anyway a ZRAM, which is usually around 8 gigabytes or a little less depending on the system. And then we have here our encrypted partition. So as you can see, everything worked well. Now let me switch to the root user here and authenticate, clean up the terminal, and let me type in badrfs subvolume list on the root file system. And you can see we have the subvolumes we created in the Anaconda installer. So we have the home subvolume, we have the root subvolume, the var subvolume, and the varlib machine subvolume, which is created automatically by Fedora. And it's a nested subvolume, in this case of the var subvolume I created manually. So this is a very quick video on how you can actually use the Anaconda installer to create customized installations, in this case on Fedora. Now, if you try this out, let me know in the comments below how it's working for you. And if you know already the Anaconda installer very well, please share with the community also your thoughts and your knowledge. I personally like it actually. It's true, it's not so intuitive like maybe the Calamares installer or Ubiquiti, but it has good options, and sometimes you need to dig them out, but the options are there if you know where they are, of course. And it's an installer which I personally like, and it was also part, by the way, of the RHCSA exam. So I hope you liked the video, guys. If you did, please hit the thumbs up and subs to the channel if you haven't already. Subs always help me out. And if you want to support my work, you can become a patron. As you probably already know, on Patreon we are doing a live webinar every month, once a month. We are focusing on one topic about Linux. Or if you want, you can also donate via PayPal through my website as well. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. I really appreciate that, and I'll see you very soon in the next one.